All right, hey everyone, I'm Zoe.
I'm Nick.
And we are the co-creators of the Learn How to Code course that's new on Codecademy this week. So for this live stream, we're doing something that's a little bit different. We are going to be pair programming one of the interactions that we built in the course. So rather than go through a project that's associated with it, we're giving you more of a behind the scenes look into how we made something for the course. Nick, you want to talk a little bit about the project?
Yes. So first of all, looks like, let me know if you can't hear us okay or you can't see us okay, and we can work on that anytime. But back to what we're talking about. Right, okay. In the variables module and lesson, have an echo, audio is affected. Okay. Yeah? Okay.
We're going to keep going.
We're going to have Alex help us out. We have the variables lesson, which essentially teaches the concept of variables, which are used throughout programming. Mm-hmm. The whole Learn How to Code track, the whole course, is about these fundamental programming concepts, and variables is one of them. But we're not teaching this with any programming language. We're doing it agnostic of any programming language, which is why we're building these cool interactive applets, which are super fun to make.
Exactly.
And we're going to build one of those right now. We're going to show you how we built one of those.
So this particular one was built with HTML, CSS, and a JavaScript library called jQuery. Some of the other ones were built with another library called P5. But we do have a jQuery course here on Codecademy, so we thought it would be good to show you this one. Do you want to demo how the project works first?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go over here and go full screen. So terrain one, I'm just gonna show you.
All right, let's go for it.
Yeah, I'm gonna type rocks in here.
All right.
Then I'm gonna type grass in here. Mm-hmm. And then finally, forests.
Awesome. So essentially, we're teaching the idea of variables through constructing kind of like a game board. If you've ever played Settlers of Catan, that was kind of the inspiration for this. And so the idea is that after we've made learners in the previous exercise write out each name for each kind of terrain they want on each square, they realize it's pretty tedious. There's a lot of repetition. So in the next exercise, we show them, okay, you could save it to a variable, and then it will put out that pattern to whichever one you've designated as terrain 1, terrain 2. And you have a couple of different options there. So after that, then we show it with some other patterns, and then you actually get to code some variables yourself. Cool. I think that's a pretty good explanation.
Yes.
So we're going to jump into the a little bit of an explanation of the code that's already there in the project itself. After that, Nick is going to walk through programming the JavaScript file, and I'm going to be here on hand to help out. Of course, at any point, you can ask questions in the chat. We're going to take some breaks throughout, but if you have like a really important question, we'll be keeping our eyes on that. We also have Alex, the man behind the screen, to help us out in case we miss anything as we go along.
And I think like Alex said, if you're looking on the YouTube channel, you can get to the link in the description. If you're on Codecademy, you can get to the link. It's just the video right there. That's what you see on the screen over there.
Yeah. We do suggest, though, if you are coding it in this project space right here, you can see that there's a link to the video. However, if you play the video while you're in the project space, it's going to be a little delayed. So we recommend actually opening up the link in YouTube and listening to it there and coding along in this. You're also welcome to code this along in your own text editor if you have one. We're going to be doing it here in the project space so that we'll all be on the same page as everyone using it.
Mm-hmm. You know what?
What?
I think we should introduce ourselves a little bit more.
Okay, sure.
Zoe, what else have you done at Codecademy?
I've done a lot of different things at Codecademy. So I've been a curriculum developer here for about a year and a half. I came here after finishing graduate school at NYU's ITP program. And so since coming here, I've worked on a CSS grid course. I've worked on some data science content, including our data visualization with Python courses. I started the Code Foundations track and have basically been leading that for 8 months now. So yeah, I have like a real investment in making learning how to program really accessible to new people. And so getting to do a lot of Code Foundations content that's more about why is programming important, how to get started with programming, especially our new Learn How to Code stuff is really in line with kind of my mission of being here at Codecademy.
I've been here for, I guess, like a year and a half. You started a little bit before me. I have worked on, I also audited a CSS grid thing. I did a little bit of Learn Alexa, which I know you worked on.
Yeah, I also did Learn Alexa.
Yeah. And what else have we done? Didn't learn SQL from scratch. Worked on that with Sonny, if you've seen him before on live streams.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's a SQL king. And what else have I done? I've done some JavaScript stuff. I've been kind of all over the place until this past few months where we've been working together, doing coding foundation stuff, working on this.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. And just another quick plug for this course, even if you are familiar with programming and concepts like variables and functions or like, something that you're pretty familiar with, the way that we teach them is pretty new to how we teach on Codecademy, which was a really fun experience for myself and Nick. For me personally, getting to pull into some of my experience with interaction design, getting to try out new ways of working with the LE. So give them a try, give us some feedback so we know if you liked them and what we can do to improve our teaching in the future.
Tim, you're right. TDD was very important to me. Okay.
All right.
Okay, so let's walk through like what we're going to start with. So you know where we're at, and if you're just beginning, that's okay. If you have a basic understanding of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, even better. That's kind of what we assume starting this. But we're going to walk you through each step. So let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, so first we're going to start off by explaining the files that are already there in the project itself. So we have
Just gonna reset this.
All right, we're gonna wait.
Okay.
We're gonna show you the non-JavaScript version first. But what we do have is we have this index HTML file, and we have a couple of different things going on. But for those who are new to coding or want a little bit of refresher, the index.html file is where we have our HTML code, which is how we structure the layout of our page. So that's where we're deciding what kind of content is going to go in there. And then we have another file, which is our style.css file. Mind opening up that really quickly? And that is how we are going to style everything. That's where we get our nice layout, our colors, our fonts. So they're really kind of like two important things that I want to draw your attention to that are going to be important for our JavaScript file later. And just to also kind of give you a little more context on how this was built. So as we mentioned, this is a game board, and you can see that there is this grid structure right back here, this grid of squares, and that they change every time a user inputs a certain name. So the way that we achieve that is through using CSS grid. So what is actually happening here is that we have two grids, we have two nested grids. One is just 2 columns, and then the game board itself is 3 rows and 3 columns. I'm not going to get into the specifics of CSS grid, but if you are interested, we do have a CSS course. As you mentioned, we both kind of worked on it, so that's why we're using it right here.
So now that you're familiar with what we're starting with, let's see what that looks like. So we showed you the final product, and now I reset the project, and I can show you what happens when I do this. Oh, it works.
Maybe we didn't reset the final project.
Did I?
Oh.
No. Okay.
Delete the workspace?
Yeah, I'm going to do that again, and then I'm going to reload that. Okay. And then...
Doing it live, doing it live.
Yeah,
there we go.
We broke it.
We broke it. It's good. It's ready to go. So one important thing to mention is that, so as you saw when you have the correct version running, if Nick were to type in rocks in terrain 1, all the terrain 1 squares would change to rocks. Now, it doesn't work like that. So how are we going to achieve that? Well, one thing we want to look at is how we're creating these rectangles in the game board. So if we scroll into our HTML, awesome, thanks for making that big, we can see that we have a giant div called game board. And then within that, we have 9 other divs. And in here, we're saying that, okay, all of them are going to be called rectangle. And that is a class. So that's important because we are going to have to use that class once we get to the JavaScript part itself. So remember that rectangle class. I'm trying to think of anything else. Let's actually look at how we're currently styling the rectangle class in style.css.
I think the other thing is that the name. Do we want to talk about that?
Oh, yeah. Thanks for reminding me about that. Cool. So another thing to pay attention to is the name attribute in this input tag right over here. So the input tag relates to those squares where we're actually getting the user input. So what's important about this is that we're distinguishing those inputs from each other by giving them this name and setting it to 1 value, 2 value, and 3 value. Cool. Anything else before we
ready for
style? Okay, click on style. All right, so we've got a bunch of stuff. We're gonna kind of ignore it. Again, it's mostly like making things look pretty. But a couple things I do want to point out. Mentioned the grid layout. You can see that we're setting that grid display here in the certain column widths there. So again, if you're interested in CSS grid, pay attention to that later. But what I really want to get down to is this part here. So we have this selector dot rectangle. So in CSS, if you're calling a class, you want to put a period before it and then the class name. And then in this declaration block right here, we're going to ignore this stuff here. It's just to make, again, everything look nice. But we do have this background image property. And then everything that follows it is just what's the value of that. So right now, it's just a really pretty black gradient. That's it. But that's going to change, again, as soon as we put in our JavaScript.
Correct.
Cool.
Okay, so let's do that. Let's put in the JavaScript.
Let's put in the JavaScript. All right.
Right now, the index.html file and the styles.css, you can see that on the screen on the right here. But it has no JavaScript, so it's not interactive, which is why when I click rocks, when I type rocks, nothing happens. So we need to tell the browser that we need some more files. We need two things. We need the JavaScript, what we're going to type, and then also a library called jQuery. So jQuery is a library in JavaScript that just gives us a bunch of helper functions that makes it a lot easier to do what we're about to do.
Yeah.
You could do this with regular JavaScript. We're not going to show that here, but it is possible. We're going to use jQuery because it's just less syntax. It's like less code you have to write. And there is a downside of using a separate library. But it doesn't take that long to load, and it's a lot easier to get up and running.
Yeah.
Which is why we like it.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that we ended up using it in this example is that jQuery is really easy to prototype in. So what Nick said before, you could do this entire thing in vanilla JavaScript. It ends up being a lot of code. And if you want to spin up something really quickly just to see how a user is going to interact, jQuery is a really great option for it. Again, another plug, we've got a great series of jQuery courses on Codecademy, so if you want to dive into this more, we recommend you looking there.
Okay, so first thing, jQuery. I'm going to go back over here so you all have this link. In the project on Codecademy, you can find a link to jQuery right here, code.jquery.com. This is where we find the jQuery library. And just to demystify this, if I want to look at what is jQuery, I'm going to open up the file that is jQuery and then see a bunch of JavaScript code. It's just a bunch of functions that make it easier to do what we're about to do. We're not going to use that one because we don't need to, we're not going to use that one. We're going to use the minified version.
And why do we want to use the minified version?
The minified version has no line breaks, no spaces, so it works the same. It's just less, it takes up less in memory, which makes performance better. And you can see that that's really ugly, but it works the same. We don't need to read it. We're just going to use it, so that's fine.
There we go.
Okay, which means I click this, and this is the tag, the element that we're going to want to use. So I'm just going to copy this from here, go back to the project, and right where it says load jQuery, within the head element, I'm going to paste that. Okay, so now jQuery is in our application. So I'm going to save this and reload this. So now I haven't added any new features to this website, but I can now use jQuery. And let's show you how that works.
Awesome.
So what I just did is I clicked on the website, the little website on the right side, and go to inspect. I think it's different for different browsers, but it should be a pretty similar right click on that space. Okay, and I can go to the console and I can type in any JavaScript here. jQuery you can access with $. And then I can put in whatever selector I want.
Yeah. So again, one of the reasons that you use jQuery is that it enables you to quickly access and modify different elements in HTML. That's why we're using it here.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, we want to grab whatever value the user inputs into that little input box and then use that to modify the CSS in our squares.
Yes. So I'll give you an example of like accessing something. We can get input.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives us three things. Let me make this bigger. Yes, I want to go here and make this bigger.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, so I just did $ parentheses input. And input refers to these forms on the side here where we type code. So you can see that's what we're selecting. Input 1, input 2, input 3. Okay, and then I can also set the value. So now we've accessed it, we can modify it now. And I can put Zoe's name in here. And there it is. All of them have Zoe. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Hey, that's how I should have made it in the first place.
Everything says Zoe.
Everything says Zoe.
Curriculum developers have ego. Okay. Moving on. So we have the jQuery. Now we need to write our own code. It's going to be in a separate file called script.js.
And why do we want it in a separate file?
That makes it easier to maintain. And personally, I like it because it's just how I think of the code as separate items. And if I know there's an issue with the elements on the screen, I know it's HTML. If I know there's an issue with the JavaScript, with the interactions, then I know it's the JavaScript. So it's just kind of separation of concerns.
Cool. Let's do it.
Okay. I'm going to go to the bottom in index.html. I'm going to go to the bottom and load the script here. I'll tell you why in a second. All we do is use this script tag and the source, which is the name of the file, script.js. Okay, and then I close that.
Cool.
Okay, so now whenever this reloads, which I'll do right now, I'll save, and I'm going to do that, and reload. Now we can write code in script.js, and the browser knows about it.
Awesome.
Should we stop there for questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything we should be paying attention to? Looks good. People were able to find the jQuery CDN. Okay.
Okay.
Let's keep going.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Do you have a?
Yeah, you got a question?
Yeah.
Is that the way of importing libraries in JS?
Just chuck a URL in the HTML.
You make it sound like super like we have no regard for
Yeah.
URLs.
Just throwing them in there. There are other ways to import it. You can actually download the file itself and include it with the rest of your files. So if you were to upload it, onto your server where you're hosting your website, you could bring the library with you.
Yeah. So like to back up a little bit, imagine that we're developers making these files on our own server. And when anyone visits our website, which in this case you can see is localhost 8000, whatever that means, the browser gets those files. And we could just download the whole jQuery library, put it in our server, and it would work as well. But jQuery is available online through things called CDNs, which we don't need to get into now, but basically it's a network that makes jQuery available for any web page to use. And that's why we're doing this up here, source https code.jquery.com, and why we're naming this one down here script.js, because that's local. That's just on our server.
Yeah. So another question, and someone kind of has answered it in there about why we're not using ES6. So yeah, just to reiterate, you can do all of this in vanilla JavaScript, especially with ES6. But for the purposes of this, again, rapid prototyping, quickly typing, jQuery is really helpful. And we think it's like a nice way of like for beginners to start making interactive things.
Oh, the other thing that jQuery is nice for is browser compatibility.
Oh yes, thank you for saying that.
So like browsers do a little bit different things with JavaScript, like Safari versus Opera versus Internet Explorer versus Chrome. But jQuery takes care of all that. So when you use a function like .val, it takes care of all of those issues for you. Whereas in JavaScript, you'd have to do like separate things for each browser type.
Yep.
Okay. Versus Firefox, fine. Okay, so
let's build a file.
Let's do it. The first thing that we need to do is check for a user typing something. Like essentially when I type rocks in here, we need to know when that happens and then capture that word rocks. And browsers have a nice thing called events. So whenever a user does anything interesting on the screen in a browser, there's an event fire. The browser basically announces, hey, you just clicked. The user just clicked, or the user just typed. So for example, if I click here, then an event is fired that's called the mouse click event, whatever the name is. And for this one, there's also, for like text, there's also key press, key up, key down. We're going to use key up.
Press, up.
Key up.
Up.
Key press would work, I think, in this case.
It does not.
It does not?
Yeah, so interestingly, I tried this out to distinguish between key down, key press, and key up. And it will register for key down, it will get the press first without getting the character itself. Same thing with key press.
Right.
So you will not actually get that string that we will eventually need.
Right.
So we can, explore that later if we want to.
So to break that down, what we're talking about is imagine that like this is the key. Like I am a keyboard, this is the key. When I press down, the browser says key down event. And when I let go, the browser says key up event. So we care about that key up event because that's when we know that something's been typed.
Yep.
Okay, so let's get started.
All right. Do we want to talk about setting up a file in jQuery?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that.
Every time this loads, this page, we want to access some of the elements on the page, but we want to make sure that all of those are loaded before we start like accessing them, changing them. So jQuery conveniently gives us this thing called document.ready. And let me type this out and I'll explain to you what that means. Okay, document.ready is just a function, but it says whatever you pass into the ready, whatever arguments you pass into ready, jQuery will execute when the document's ready. To be safe, to make sure that all the HTML is loaded, we're going to put all of our code in here.
Yep. So we're kind of being like doubly safe because if you remember when Nick added the JavaScript file to the HTML, we put it at the end right before the closing body tag. So both of these techniques equally ensure that everything will be loaded in the HTML before we go into the JavaScript.
Okay, so document.ready expects a function. So define a function. This is just an anonymous function here. And whatever we need to do, we'll do in there. All right. So let me just show you, just to clarify even more what we're doing. Let me see here. I'm going to select the input boxes and then log that so you can just see exactly what's happening. So I define why do I keep doing that? Define a variable called input boxes. And it's going to be a selection of anything that is an input element with the class box.
So Nick, why did you put that $sign before input boxes? I haven't seen that in a variable before.
I could have done just input boxes, but I want to make sure that I remember later on that that variable refers to a jQuery selection rather than just some other variable in my JavaScript. So that allows me to differentiate.
Cool. And what does that $sign mean in jQuery specifically?
That is, how do I describe it? jQuery, essentially, you can access it with the word jQuery or the $sign. It's just a shorthand, which means that the $sign gives you access to all the functions, all the methods in jQuery.
Cool.
Okay, so let's console log input boxes, because I just want to make sure that I'm doing everything right. Save this. That reloads, and let's inspect. Console. Okay. We can ignore this number 5 thing up here. The point is we log something to the console, which is this, which again is the input 1, 2, and 3. And you can see
Right back there.
there. That's what we're looking for. Okay. Because that's where our event is going to happen.
Yep.
All right, so we've selected that. Now, I want to define an event handler. Like, I want to write a function that does something when the key up event happens. And we have access to that, again, with jQuery, input boxes, dot key up. Okay, so input boxes is a jQuery selection. I remember that because I put the $sign. And a jQuery selection has access to all of the jQuery methods, which is why I can use key up here. And key up expects just a function that says, what are you going to do when the key up event happens on any of these input boxes? Okay, function, event. All right, so now I'm defining a function with the parameter event. This is just normal, this is normally how you write it because that function is always going to receive an event. What I mean you'll see later. Okay.
Cool.
Now, let's capture whatever is in that event. So, you know what? Just to show you.
You want to show them the event?
I want to show them the event.
All right. It's pretty cool, guys.
And I'm going to delete this. And I'm going to open this. Okay, so now I'm back in my console. Nothing happened. Nothing console logged because the key up event didn't happen. But if I go in here, I press K, an event is logged. And there's all kinds of information in there. All we really care about is 2 things. Target. So like the event, this thing has a property called target, which is this input box. So we know whenever we get this event, we know where this is happening. Is there anything else? Yeah, we want to know where I typed K. So where is K? If I go down here to...
A lot of stuff.
You know what? I know where I can get it.
Yeah.
Let me make sure I have gone through everything.
Keep going. So many things.
Keep going.
Woo, I think it...
Value.
There we go.
Okay. That's the other property. Okay.
Okay.
Event.target, event.value. Cool. Which means I can start storing this stuff. My target, my event is some element. Let me check one thing here. Yeah. I'm going to call this the input name. This just refers to what we're clicking.
Yep. What we're typing.
What we're typing.
What we're typing. So whatever input the user is giving us.
Okay, wait. So that means, actually, I'm going to rename this value.
Okay.
So invent.value. We have this here. Right. Is whatever they typed. Example, in the previous example, that was our K. And I also want to know where this happened. So input name equals event.target. Okay, so now input value in our past example should be K. Input name should be the input box. Okay, so now I've captured that. Let me take a break there to check if everyone's following along here. Okay. All right, I think Kenny's got that one.
All right.
Keep going.
Alex, did you see anything we should address?
Maybe clarification on the $sign for jQuery. Like why is the $sign everywhere?
Yeah. So like Nick mentioned before, the $ is a symbol representation of jQuery, which kind of sounds a little abstract, but basically when you're writing a JavaScript document, you need to let it know that you're using the jQuery library. And so we do that partially by including the library in the HTML, and then it's expecting us to talk to it in a certain way. And so it recognizes the $ as a symbol like, oh, hey, like, you're talking to me, this jQuery library right now. And specifically, it's expecting a certain syntax that has the $, then a parentheses, with an object inside of it, whether it's the document or it's an object that we're selecting through syntax like with our input.box. There, it's looking for the input element in HTML with a class box.
I'm going to make some comments so we don't forget, just like as we answer questions, and I'll just be writing here. So I'm going to say select input boxes and use $, to remind me that it is jQuery selection.
Yeah. So again, like any case with naming variables, you can name variables however you want. It's just good to follow certain conventions and good practices. So specifically, if you're writing jQuery code, we put a $ before our variable name, again, to remind us that it's a specifically jQuery selector.
All right, so far we have document.ready. We've selected the input boxes, and we have done something with the key up event. Whenever key up happens, something happens. Now we're going to do something with that input.
All right.
Essentially, what we want to do is see if it's rocks, forest, or grass.
Yep.
That's like a whole nother thing, and it's going to be a lot more organized if it's a whole nother issue, just to put it in a separate function.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okay, let's call it check the input.
Check the input.
And give it these two pieces of information: the value.
Excuse me.
And the name. What I'm hoping that this check the input does is checks if it's grass, if input value is grass, rocks, or forest. If it is, then put the tile there, like the tile in the matching terrain.
Exactly.
Which is why we need that input name argument.
And just to quickly clarify, we're going to actually write out the function in just a moment, but Nick is he's calling his function first in this current function that we have right here, just so we know how the stuff that we're grabbing within this function is going to relate to that logic that Nick just explained.
Yes. Okay, so here is the function. Check the input.
All right.
And this is going to be a terrain string. And let's just do it all out. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. Can I? No, I'm just going to leave it. Okay, terrain string, and then the name is going to be...
the name that we're going to pass in.
Right. So this is the terrain name. Okay. Cool. And again, I just like to make sure that we're doing everything, that everything still is working fine. We haven't broken anything. Okay, so based on what we have here, on the key up event, we call check input, which is defined down here. What is going to happen when I reload this page in terms of the console? Let me reframe that. I'm going to save this, and I'm going to go here, and I do something like press R. In the console that we've been checking, what should we see? See if anybody
yeah, and you're welcome to respond in the chat.
Oh yeah, I'm checking the chat.
We're looking at the chat.
Yeah, I want you to just yell at me and hope I can hear it.
In the future, maybe.
There might be a little bit of delay, so we'll give people a second to think about it. R.
So John Moore says we get an R in the console.
Key up event.
From tertiary adjunct. Input value equals R. All right, another answer from John Moore.
Changing your answer.
Throw out all the answers. So Nick is also putting another good practice into play, which is checking your code as you go along. Oftentimes we, have this idea about like what our logic is going to be, and so we just start coding, and then we get to the end, and then we realize, oh, there's a bug. So what's good about what Nick's doing right now is that he's created one function, he started creating another function, he's taking a pause and being like, okay, let me make sure before I write out the rest of this function that I have everything in place before I implement the rest of my logic.
So as we're getting some more answers in, just want to clarify, what I'm asking is I press R, there's a key up event, hint. Something happens in the code and something is going to be logged to the console. And I'm asking what that is. So far we've gotten like R, maybe it's key up event, maybe it's input value equals R. Ooh, fancy. Okay, so then I'm gonna show you.
All right, so now we've got some answers.
I've done it a lot of times, so let's reload. Okay. I'm gonna go over here. I'm gonna do it again. Press R, let go. And this is logged. We get this input element, which is here. Okay. And we also get this undefined, which I was not expecting.
Someone in the chat may have also come across the same.
So let's see what we're doing here. Close this. In the event, we select the event.value and the event.target, and we send those. We call check the input with that. Yes. Okay. Check the input. We call terrain string terrain name, and we're logging that. So for some reason, terrain string is undefined, and terrain name is the whole target, the whole input. Let's start with the easy one, in my mind, the event.target. So event.target is right. It's the input. It's where the event happened. For our purposes, we actually just want the name attribute of that. We'll get to why that is in a little bit, but I'm going to do that right now. So instead of just doing the target, I'm just going to say name.
And just as a quick refresher, you can find the name attribute in the HTML file attached to that specific input. Each input has a name attribute.
Okay, so I save this. Let's try one more time. Go over here, R. Yay, one value, which is the name.
Awesome.
As expected, but undefined, still weird. And I could go through and show you where all of this is, but I just happen to know that it's target.value instead of value.
And it looks like Michael Montgomery also figured this out as well. It only works with event.target.value.
I mean, that was
yeah.
I wasn't going to say that, but yeah. No, it's fine. That's fine. They're just going to teach us the rest of the time. Okay.
I mean, that's what we had.
Thank you, Gurgly. Let's see if it works. R. Yeah.
There we go.
Keep doing this.
Cool. So in addition to typing goobledygook like Nick was just doing, we could also type one of those special keywords that we are looking for, like rocks. And so now that we know that we can grab rocks, which is one of the strings we are looking for, and then we can grab the name of that specific input box, we can start putting together some logic for attaching our user input to our rectangle backgrounds. Awesome.
Okay. So now I can get rid of this. Well, I'm gonna leave that up.
Okay.
So first thing I want to do is check if what I typed is grass or is rocks.
Yeah.
Let's start with grass.
Start with grass.
And eventually we're going to be checking grass or rocks or forest, which sounds like a conditional statement.
Yeah, if this string is grass, or else if it's rocks. Sounds like conditional to me.
So I'm gonna use that with the if statement in JavaScript. What's the condition I want here? If what I type is grass, then I expect that terrain string
because that's what they're typing.
should be grass.
All right. And again, for those newbies, what Nick just typed out is an expression where he's checking if the terrain string, again, what we're grabbing as that input value from the user, is equal to grass. And so, you may have seen an equal sign before. This is a triple equal sign. So we are checking if it has the same string as grass, but we're also making sure it's a grass. It's a grass.
It's a grass.
It's grass if it's a string data type. Strictly equals.
Okay. So, terrain string equals grass. I know that it equals grass in this hypothetical situation. That means that I want to put in terrain 1, in all of these terrain 1s, the grass image, like we saw in the beginning.
Or any of them. Just any time a user inputs grass, it could be in terrain 1, terrain 2, terrain 3. It will know that in the corresponding blocks over there that it should fill it with grass.
So I need to select those, since I'm going to be modifying the terrain 1, I need to select those. As you may recall, I'm going to go back to the index.html. We define things with these classes for the game board. Like 1 value, 2 value, 1 value. But we also use that as the name for those inputs, which is how we can check this. So whoever wrote this code was thinking ahead. Which means that we can use the name to find the class. Okay. So what that means is I want to grab, so I'm going to use jQuery, whatever the input, whatever terrain rectangle, right? It's like some kind of dot rectangle. I'm going to go back here because I'm getting lost. Okay, so I'm going to select everything with a class rectangle that also has this 1 value.
Yeah.
Or whatever the name is.
I was going to say, because we want to make sure, we don't want it to be just 1 value, because then we could only attach grass to the ones with 1 value.
Right.
So how do we make it more general?
We could use terrain name.
Right, we have that terrain name variable.
Right.
That's associated with the specific input.
Like last time it was 1 value when I typed in the first box.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to add it. I'm going to add it here.
Add.
Okay. I'm just going to select that.
Okay.
Let's see if that works. I'm going to console log this.
Okay.
Should we ask again? What do we expect to be console logged here? What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the web page, type R in the first input box, and then I'm going to check the console. What do we all think is going to show up in the console? Like if I did R, what would happen? Nothing. Like that response.
Well, still a response. So we won't reach the statement, Chip Long says.
Nice.
Okay, thank you for a fuller explanation of how we're getting to nothing. Can someone get into that a little bit more? We won't get into that statement.
We won't reach that statement.
Does not match the condition. Okay,
Nice.
Clarifying a bit more.
Yeah.
Want to go from there?
Well, that teamwork right there.
Nice.
Nice.
That is pair programming in action as well.
That's quadruple.
Quadruple programming,
Yeah.
all the brains.
Right. Okay.
So as folks are mentioning, nothing's going to happen because we can ignore that other console log. But basically, we have a conditional statement right now that's checking a specific condition, and that condition is terrain string is equal to grass. We're checking if it's equal to grass. Since we've only typed in R in there, R would get saved as terrain string. It would check, is R equal to grass? And it would say no, nothing would happen, including that console log that's in there.
Let's check.
And Tammy Reese, you are correct, because we do still have that other console log up there. Sorry, we forgot about that.
So, right. So we see our one value, which is this first statement. That's always executed. But we don't see anything from this statement. I can even make it more clear if I comment this out. You'll see what tertiary and chip we're talking about. So I save this. I go again. I'm going to put them up together here. Nothing happens.
Gobbledygook. All right, now type grass.
Okay, fine.
Yay!
It works.
It works.
So I typed grass, and this showed up in the console log.
Yep.
Okay. So what the heck is this? This is a jQuery selection.
Okay.
We can check more about it. Let's see if I can show you exactly where it is. I'm gonna do. I think we can. How do I best describe this? Okay, what we expected was a jQuery object to be logged, which is exactly what happened. This w.fn.init, this previous object. Okay?
All right. And just so you know, we got 15 minutes left.
Okay. So I'm gonna save, do this again. Grass. Okay.
Cool.
Now, that means that we're getting our jQuery object.
Awesome.
Now what we want to do is change the background.
Yeah, exactly. So we know our condition is working, and all that we're having it execute right now is this console.log statement. But what we really want it to do is to change the background of those squares up there to a nice grassy pattern. So how do we do that?
And as you recall, the background image is set here with this CSS property, background image, and the value is linear gradient. You don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
The point is that's the black that you see now. We want to change that.
And we specifically want to change it to an image that we have hosted on AWS. So just to note, we've actually already given you all of the URLs for these in the project page. So if you go back to the narrative, you can scroll down, and towards the bottom, you'll see a couple of the different links that we use for the grass, rocks, and forest. So make sure that you have these on hand for the next portion. We're going to grab our grass URL, make sure that we have it on hand, and then go back to our JavaScript.
Okay. And what I want to do is I want to change the CSS property background image to the value, whatever that URL is.
Yep.
Okay. So let's, instead of console logging this, I'm just going to grab this. Const terrain.
Okay.
I want to say this terrain CSS, which is again another function that jQuery gives us, just making it easy, that will change the styling of whatever this terrain is. It takes two arguments. The first is the property, background image. That's the property I want to change. And to make this clear, I'm going to add this. I want to change to that URL. Show you this. Okay.
So a couple things you may notice. As Nick mentioned, .css is a easy jQuery method to change any CSS styling. And what you have to do again is to give it two values. You have to give it the property name and the property value. What you may notice though is that the syntax is different from how we do things in CSS, right? So we don't have a colon separating the property from the property value, and we don't have it ending in a semicolon. So just be aware of that. It's separated with a comma instead. Another, what is a funny CSS styling syntax thing is that we have to state that something is a URL. So we put URL beforehand, and then we have our URL in parentheses. So make sure you have that URL beforehand.
I just remembered one quick thing. I'm going to add this space in here. It's just a bug that I think we'll save ourselves some time later.
Okay. You're adding a bug in?
No. I'm fixing a bug.
Okay.
Because it's two classes.
Okay.
I'll explain that in a minute.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just explain it now. What I was doing is I was putting those two strings together, the dot rectangle and whatever the input name is, which would make a giant word rectangle input name. But that's really not how we select that rectangle. You need a space, just like you see here, rectangle 3 value. So that's how you select it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, let's see if this works.
Try it. Oh god. Holding our breath.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
hold on. Just want to make sure.
Okay.
Reload this. Okay. So it doesn't work.
Okay.
Let me double check what we've done here.
Let me check our console.
Yeah.
I've got a thought.
You got a thought? Okay. Let's check our console.
Could we console log that terrain variable that we just created?
Yeah, let's do that.
Cool.
Yeah, because I was messing around with that. Let's see what I did. Yeah.
Cool.
Terrain, save, and then open this again one more time. Grass.
Aw,
So the string isn't showing up here.
interesting.
Let's try this. Grass. Let's try it with the other ones.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Let's compare. Take a quick look at what I've wrote notes to myself here. Event. Input value. Yep. That makes sense. Check the input value.
And we know our conditional was working before.
So if anyone sees the bug, yell out. See what I've done here.
Could we console log something else? Could it be we have an extra parenthesis or okay in the live const? Oh, interesting.
So what we know so far is that whenever I type grass, that we're not reaching this console log. So we know that terrain string doesn't equal grass somehow. Yeah. Oh. Is there something in here that I?
You see that?
Oh.
Ooh. See that? Yes.
You're right.
Thanks, Tammy Reese. Good eyes.
Okay.
Now we're good. Back to
let's try one more
nice
time.
and green.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. And what did I just log? The terrain here?
Terrain.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So why is the CSS not changing?
Yeah. I think it's another issue with the selectors here. I think it needs to be dot. Let me make sure that this works before I explain it.
That was gonna be Garas.
All right, let me see.
Did it, man?
All
Scary.
right.
Live debugging.
I'll explain what I did. So I thought that I needed a space. Basically, what I had previously was dot rectangle space plus the terrain name. Apparently jQuery doesn't like that. I thought that it just needs to match the CSS selector, but it really is expecting another dot here because there's two classes we're talking about here, dot rectangle and dot terrain name. Yeah, this is, so if I go into here again, this is what we're talking about, dot rectangle, dot one value.
So again, as we've kind of seen a couple times now, the way that syntax works across the files, sometimes there's overlap, sometimes there's not. Great place to double check that stuff is documentation.
All right. So let's see here.
Do you want to try grass again? Let's try it in another one.
Yeah.
Will it turn the other one's green? Turns the other one's green.
Yes.
Turns that one green? Great.
Ah,
Amazing.
yeah.
So we can turn everything to grass, but we've got two other background images that we want to use. We have the rocks one and the forest one.
Right.
But lucky for us, we've kind of figured out the majority of our code so far, right? So Nick, what would be the next step that you would take to finish this off so we could add our rocks and forest?
So I want to add something to check the input. And I want to check for different terrain strings, right? I want to check for grass, I want to check for rocks, and check for forest. So I'm going to extend my conditional statement to have check for grass. If that's grass, make it grass. If it's rocks, make it rocks.
Yep.
Forest.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. So in here, I can get rid of this. And I'm going to clean up this a little bit.
All right.
All right. So that's my first if, else it's not grass. Then we want to check if the terrain string is something else. Forest.
Okay.
And I'm going to do essentially the same thing, just with a different URL. That's why I'm going to copy this code.
And congratulations, Michael Bolin, on getting your grass to grow. We have all fallen to the extra syntax elements,
as you've seen.
As we've seen, as it happens all the time.
Different. So instead of grass here, I don't want this to be grass anymore. It's forest, so I want it to be forest. Yeah, let's see if that works.
Yeah. You can always grab, we also have the separate URL for forest too, just in case.
Okay. Does grass still work?
Grass still works.
Does forest work? Yeah.
Ooh, we got a forest.
This has never felt so good.
We're writing code.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I'm going to knock this last one out really quickly, and then I'll answer questions. I'm going to write one more else if for our last terrain.
Yeah.
Rocks. And then again, I'm going to go here, copy that, paste that.
And while you're doing that, I just saw a question here. Dominic said, question about key up function. When you type R, that was one key up action, but grass is 5 key ups. You are correct. If you were actually just to console log the user value and have the console open as you typed your input, you could see that the console would log it each time it changed. So it would go from G to GR to GRA to GRASS, etc. I mean, well, you know, missed a few in the middle there. But point being that it's actually calling that each time, and so it's still checking it each time. Luckily for us, computers are really fast, so it really isn't a super big burden on them. But it will be checking it each time until it reaches a string that meets the conditional.
So now we have finished the basic product.
Yeah, we did it.
I just want to clarify a few things.
Yeah.
If you did get stuck at any point, you can follow along up there in the project on Codecademy. This kind of explains what we just did with little hints and stuff. So for example, these are where the URLs are, and there's additional steps that we won't get to today, but you can build this out even more following along.
Yeah, exactly. So you may refactor things in a certain way to add more variables in, for example. You can change it so, if, say, user error is sometimes an issue, or really more about your expectations for a user. So we're anticipating a user to type grass, rocks, and forest as all lowercase. But what would happen, Nick, if I typed uppercase G and then the rest of it lowercase, or the entire thing uppercase?
Okay, so grass doesn't work.
So grass doesn't work, but lowercase grass does. And can you do it with title capitalization too?
Yes, we'll try this one.
Yeah.
Grass.
So that also doesn't work. And that's again because we are checking exactly a string that is lowercase typed grass. But we could, do you want to quickly show them that?
Yeah, I can jump into it really quick.
Okay. So there's a quick fix for that one, just to anticipate a couple of edge cases. So I'm going to let Nick explain that to you.
Yeah. So there is an intermediate step here that I'm going to talk about real quick to check for just the title case grass. I could say if terrain equals grass, or I'm just using the or symbols here. Can I do this? Yes.
Oh, nice.
Grass or equals grass, which would work. So then I could do lowercase grass or title case grass. If I did anything else, like all caps grass, it wouldn't work.
Yep.
And then there's all kinds of different variations, capital R, capital A, whatever. So the way that we could cover all those cases is just make everything uppercase and then only check for uppercase.
Yep. Or we can make everything lowercase and make everything all lowercase.
True.
Yeah.
So
I like uppercase because then it's like you're yelling and it's fun.
So I'm going to do it in the key up event. When we capture the key up information, we're going to immediately make everything uppercase. So target.value to uppercase, which is just a regular method in JavaScript for any string that makes it uppercase. Okay, so I save this. And now instead of checking for grass, I really want to check for grass. Okay, let's see if that works. I'm gonna get this, this there, is that there? Grass still works. Grass.
Oh.
And grass.
Grass.
Yeah. And I know that works, so I'm gonna add that for rocks forest as well. So.
And some folks are talking about white space, other things. Yeah, you could, write out lots of different ways to check for lots of different user inputs. Actually, fun fact, another behind-the-scenes story, that's how we check your code at Codecademy. It's doing a lot of things like this, where we're like, okay, how do we balance what we think the user will input and what we're checking for? So someone mentioned regular expressions. We write a lot of regular expressions. We also use a bunch of different testing suites to do some try and evaluate functions. Built some of those too for a couple of these interactions as well to give user feedback.
Were there any other questions that we have missed? Got the project. Okay, and then we're also gonna, I think we can provide this code if we need to, the final code. If a lot of people get stuck, we can also provide that.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else?
Yeah.
Couple other extensions.
If you want to keep going.
If you want to keep going. So one thing you may have noticed is that I'm just gonna dry for a second.
Yeah, go for it.
So you may notice that in this input box, the text color is black. And in this input box, the text color was gray until I clicked on it. And it's gray here. So how it actually functions on the site is we've added another little helper function just to allow when the user has input their text. After you click away, like I clicked away from here, the text changed back to gray. For it to stay black afterwards. So that could be a little extension for you to try. Another extension is to add more images. So we actually have a whole slew of images that are used as part of this project in a future exercise, and Nick has added them here. So you can try it with a different one. And you may think about if you are using all these images, you could, rather than use a conditional statement to check for different inputs, you could use a switch case instead and add that to your code.
So that's how you build one of the applets that's in a Codecademy course, one that we built. That's basically what we did for work.
Yeah, exactly.
More than that.
Pretty sweet work, yeah.
And we did a little bit better on our own, but yeah.
Yeah, not under
Thanks
the
to
constraints of an hour time pressure.
Thanks to all your help, we did it in an hour.
Yeah, exactly. So again, you can check out this live stream after we're finished and watch the entire process through again in case you missed any steps. If the code is still not working for you, don't worry. Happens all the time. That happened for us during the middle of this live stream as well. Breaking your code is just a part of doing it. So just make sure to look through it closely, see if you have any extra parentheses or you haven't closed a bracket. Any small thing like that, just maybe the thing that you need to get rid of.
If you do have other feedback you want to leave, there is a form in the chat a link to a form you can chat.
Yeah.
And then if you do want to see this in action or are interested in what else we're teaching in this lesson, there is a link in the YouTube description later on I can just go to it.
Okay.
For Learn How to Code.
Ooh, meta.
I know, that was weird. I don't want to go back there. This is where it actually is on the website. So check it out.
Yeah.
We
Tell
put
us
some
what
love
you
into
think.
it.
We did. We put a lot of love into it. All right.
All right.
Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful rest of your Thursday.